Hey everyone, Josh here with J&T's Journey, and today I'm going to talk about what happens if you walk into your AVan and your lights don't work. Hey everyone, Josh here with J&T's Journey, and today we are back in our friend's AVan and we're having a look at one of the more common complaints that we see on the AVan forums. Quite often we'll see posts of my lights don't work, help, I'm plugged into power, my lights won't come on, my pump won't run, my outlets aren't working, but my microwave is and my air conditioner is, and I've got 240 volts in the van. We're going to talk about a few of the misconceptions around the power system. I have done a power system video on how the different power systems are laid out in the AVan. This is a little bit more of a subject specific video. If you haven't already checked out the overall power system video, make sure you go check that one out. The link's in the description. Alright, so here's the situation. You've walked into your AVan and you've gone to use it, you've arrived at site, you've pulled it out of storage, you've towed it somewhere, you've set it up, you've plugged into the wall at the caravan park, you've gone to turn your lights on, no lights. Maybe you're off grid. You've walked into your AVan, you haven't bothered to try the lights, you tried to turn your pump on, and no pump. What's happened? So there's a few possibilities as to what could have happened here, and I'm going to take you through the basic troubleshooting process to try and figure out where the system has failed and what you might need to do in order to recover it. Now, before I get started, I do want to say that while we are providing these videos to help the community, I am not an auto electrician, I'm not a licensed Sparky. Any advice that we give in these videos is for entertainment purposes only, and as always, you should always seek your own professional advice, and we take no liability for actions that arise out of the video. Before we start the troubleshooting process, let's talk about why your 240 volt devices might be working, but your 12 volt devices aren't. So within an AVan, and this is a very high level summary, there are two different power systems that allow you to use accessories within the camper. One being the 240 volt system, one being the 12 volt system. Now, there is a link between the two. So there is a battery charger between the 240 volt system and the 12 volt system, but the battery chargers that are fitted to the vans are usually intelligent chargers. Now, this is in a standard AVan. If your AVan has been modified, this may vary a little bit, but the chargers are generally intelligent chargers. Now, what that means is that if the charger can't detect the battery, it's not going to provide power to the 12 volt system within the van. The 12 volt system within the van is primarily provided power from the battery, and if the battery goes so flat that that charger can't recognize that there's a battery there, the charger won't kick on, which means it won't charge the battery and it won't provide 12 volts to the van. There's a few possibilities as to what could have happened here. Now, if your lights and your pump aren't working, there's a couple of issues that it could be, but let's presume for a minute that your lights only aren't working, but the pump is, or the pump is working and your lights aren't. So the pump and the lights run on separate 12 volt fuses. Now the 12 volt fuses are located in a 1D, and this is different for other layouts. Unfortunately, I don't have access to the other layouts to show you where the fuses are on those. If you're watching this video, if you could post a photo or on our Facebook showing where the fuses are located, or a short clip to show where the fuses are located in the other layouts, that would be awesome. But the first thing to do is to check your fuses. Now, the fuses will be located down underneath the seat, and for the purposes of filming this video, I've actually pulled all the fuses because the battery in this particular AVan is fine. But you want to have a look for these. Now, in a standard layout, there are 3 of these fuses. One runs the 12 volt charger, one runs the pump, and one runs the lights. In particular, if you find that your lights are working but your pump's not, or your pumps are working but your light's not, the most likely culprit is a fuse. Now, I will say, generally speaking, fuses won't blow unless there is some kind of other fault within the system, but it's worth checking them anyway, pulling them out, reseating them, and making sure that it's not just a loose connection on the fuses. If you've done that, then we need to move on to the next thing, because the next most likely culprit is a flat battery. Okay, so you've verified that the fuses in the AVan are okay and everything's still not working. Your lights won't work, your pump won't come on. What's the next thing you need to do? Well, the next thing you need to go looking for, and the most likely culprit, and this is the most common type of failure that we see, is the battery has gone completely flat. As previously mentioned, there is an intelligent charger in most of these AVans, and if the battery has dropped below a certain threshold, and it does depend on what charger you're using as to what that threshold might be, it won't charge. It won't provide power to the AVan. There are a few things that we can do to try and get that battery to recover. However, I will say, if you've watched our previous video on the rotten egg smell, you do need to be really careful that you don't smell that smell. If at any point you do smell that rotten egg hydrogen sulfide smell, remove the battery immediately, replace it. The battery is toast. So, how do we now check and see whether or not the battery is actually flat? And if it is flat, how do we get it charging again? So what you'll need is a multimeter. Now, I have a whole bunch of these, a whole variety of these. This one is a clamp meter. Now, I like this one because it allows me to measure current as well as voltage, and there's a temperature probe and a few other bits and pieces you can plug into this. This is a little bit more expensive one, but you can, any basic multimeter, and I do not recommend those little plug-in USB things. They are horribly inaccurate. Get yourself a basic multimeter from JCar. They aren't expensive. This is a really handy tool to have with you, especially if you need to troubleshoot anything 12 volts. So that includes your trailer electrics, your trailer plugs, anything like that. So what you want to do is take your multimeter, you want to set it to volts, and in this case, on this multimeter, that's that setting. You want to lift the bed, you want to remove the cover off the battery, and then you want to probe the terminals directly on the battery and see whether or not we have charge in the battery. Now, in order to get to the battery, you just need to pop the clip off and then remove the lid from the battery box. Now, this can be a little bit fiddly, and in order to do this, I like standing in the 1D layout anyway. I like standing in the storage compartment underneath the bed. It just gives you a little bit better access. Now, in terms of what to probe on your battery, you're going to have a negative terminal, which will be black, and a positive terminal, which will be red. What we want to do is, once our voltmeter is set to the voltage reading, we want to put the negative probe on the negative terminal, the positive probe on the positive terminal, and check what voltage our battery is at. Now, this is a bit harder to do one-handed, so we're going to try and just jam the probes in there. Trying to do this while filming is actually quite hard. Now, in this case, we can see that this battery is actually quite healthy. So we're seeing 13.76 volts. The reason we're seeing 13.76 volts is because I've only just taken this battery off charge. Now, if your battery is faulty, this will read something below 10 volts. You know, it might read 8 volts, it might read 7 volts, it might read 6 volts. If you don't have a low voltage reading here, so anything below about 11, and your lights and your pump still aren't working in your van, and you've already checked the fuses, then you do need to engage an auto electrician, because it means that there is likely a wiring fault in your van somewhere that you need to get addressed. And if you're watching this video, the best course of action is to go talk to an auto electrician. However, if this is reading 10 volts, 11 volts, 8 volts, there are a few things that we can attempt to do to bring the battery back up to charge to get your AVan working again. Bear in mind, if the battery does get very, very low, below 10 volts, it will shorten the life of the battery, and we do recommend leaving the van plugged in, and we have a video on that. I'll include the link in the description on why and how you should leave your van plugged in so that your battery doesn't go flat. Alright, so you've popped the cover off the battery and you've verified that the voltage is low. What do you do next? Well, this depends a little bit on how old your AVan is, but the first thing to do is to check whether or not your charger has a power supply mode. Now, I'll include some footage here from a recent video that we did on the power system in the AVan. In the 1D layout, the standard battery charger is located down here underneath the bed. Now, this is a projector charger, so this is one of the more modern chargers. Now, if your battery goes flat, what do? Well, what you can do is if you come down on the front here, you will see that the battery charger has a whole bunch of different modes listed here. Now, where these are laid out on the front panel does change a little bit with the age of the charger, but most of these are the same. Now, if the battery charger is sitting on one of these modes here, so in this case the van is running an AGM battery, so the AGM mode has been selected, but if the battery's gone completely flat, what will end up happening is that power on light will just start flashing, and neither the charging or the fully charged light will be lit. Now, if you're in the situation where your lights in your AVan aren't working and this charger is sitting here with the light flashing, what you can do is you can toggle the mode until you get to the power supply mode. Now, what does it do in power supply mode? In power supply mode, this goes from being a charger that needs to see the battery in order to put out power to being a power supply, which means it will ignore whether or not it can see the battery and it will just start outputting power. Now, this can be used for a period, say half an hour or so, to attempt to get your battery to recover from a dead flat charge. After half an hour, toggle the charger back to whatever mode you had it on previously, which in this case is AGM. And if the charger doesn't kick on and starts charging with the charging light, then you know that you have a bigger fault with your battery that needs to be addressed. Now, be aware, the standard 7 amp charger will take a good 13-14 hours to fully charge the battery. So if your battery does go flat, it's really important to plug it in and leave it plugged in overnight, or at least for a 24-hour period, to try and bring that battery back up to full charge. As I said though, if at any point in time you smell a rotten egg smell within the AVan, stop, turn everything off, disconnect everything and replace the battery. It's toast. That's all good and well, Josh, but I don't have an intelligent battery charger in my AVan. I've got an older AVan with a unit that doesn't have the ability to switch into power supply mode. What are my options? The next thing is an accessory that I think everybody who travels should have with them, and that is one of these things. Now, this is a bit of a premium option when it comes to this, but there are many different versions of this. This is a 12-volt jump starter pack. So one of these can absolutely get your battery charging again if your battery is on low voltage. So these packs are designed to jumpstart your car, but they can also jumpstart your battery in an AVan. And the process for using one of these in an AVan is basically the same as what you'd use in a car. What you do is you take your jump starter pack. If you need to plug the cables in, then you plug the cables in. In the case with this one actually has a dedicated port, here it is, to plug the jump starter cables in. And then once they're plugged into that, you attach them to the battery. That will allow your lights and your pump to start working immediately, although I suggest you leave them off for a period of about 15 minutes, though it is a good idea just to turn your lights on to make sure that they're working again. And then leave this sitting on the battery for about 5 minutes or so. And the reason I say leave it on the battery for about 5 minutes or so is because it's going to bring the battery voltage of your battery up to the point where the charger starts working. But you don't want to remove this too early, because you don't want to remove this, have that battery sag again, and have the charger drop out. So attaching one of these to the battery for a period of 5 or 10 minutes could just be the little boost that you need in order to get the battery to start charging again. Now, unfortunately, due to an issue with my camera that I was using to shoot footage, I lost the last couple of little bits of this video. So to summarize, we've just had a look and established that we can use our intelligent charger if we have a power supply mode to recover the battery if the battery's gone completely flat. We've also established that we can use a portable jump starter pack, and I will leave a link down in the description to the jump starter pack that we have. It's a Sennheiser one. It's got a compressor in it as well. It actually works really, really well. What happens if you don't have either of those? Well, you're not really left with a whole lot of options. If you've got a set of jumper cables that are long enough, but you would need quite a long set of jumper cables, you could park your vehicle next to the door of the AVan, run those jumper cables in, hook them up to the battery. It's effectively doing the same thing as the jump starter pack is, to try and get the battery to recover enough that the charger that is in your AVan will actually start charging that battery. Other alternatives are removing the battery and using the jumper cables next to your vehicle, leaving it on hooked up with the jumper cables for half an hour or so, then reinstalling the battery. But again, there's no guarantee that any of these methods are going to recover a battery. In particular, if you had a battery that's been abused quite a few times, run absolutely dead flat more than half a dozen times, you're probably going to be up for a new battery. And as I said, if you ever smell rotten egg smell, time to get yourself a new battery. The real test, however, really is whether or not the battery will remain charged. So once you've got your battery charging, as long as you're not smelling that smell, if you're plugged into a powered site, your battery charge is going to do most of the heavy lifting. The question then becomes, when you unplug the camper from power and leave it overnight, what happens the next morning? If you unplug the camper after performing one of these battery recovery operations and you find that your lights are very dim the next morning, or the lights aren't working next morning, that means that your battery has failed and it is time for a new battery. Unfortunately, there's only so many things that you can do. Hopefully, if you're watching this video and you're having this issue, one of the methods that we have described can get your battery recovered enough that you can complete your trip, that you're not left in darkness, and then you can get the battery properly replaced. And as I've said previously, make sure you store your van plugged in so that the battery doesn't go flat and suffer premature failure in the future. So I hope you've enjoyed that one. This has been a bit longer than normal. There's a few details that I think are really important to mention in this one, and we've shown you a few different ways that you can attempt to recover your battery. Now, there is no guarantee that the battery will recover or will stay recovered, but as I said previously, this might just get you out of the woods. If you're enjoying our content, please don't forget to like, subscribe, and share our videos. If you're interested in supporting the channel further, you can sign up with a YouTube membership. You'll get priority responses to comments, you'll show up in the leaderboard on our channel, and you'll also get a mention at the end of the video. Thanks everybody for watching. I've been Josh with J&T's Journey. Cheers.